Hey all, let's give you a second to get in her. Hopefully there's audio and hopefully there's no echo. I want to talk about the show from this week and get your feedback because this was a lot of fun yesterday. I totally get why Owen. Let me know if you can hear me. Audio's good. Good, thank you. I totally get why Owen is into this. Is there echo? I'm sipping on Monster. Come on, you know this. This is the official drink of Michael Malice. Right here. Thank you for changing the title. On Libertarian Infighting. It's a delay, so of course you couldn't see that I held up the can, because God forbid I know how to do this correctly. And now it looks a little frozen. Yeah, I want to talk about Tuesday's show with Gavin, holy crap, with Tom Woods and Matt Welch. I was very, very... Aaron, do you want to be banned? I was very, very excited to make that happen. As I talked about in my Facebook group, secret Facebook group, I didn't want to tell anyone because I was scared being Russian, you have this mentality of like, don't believe something awesome is going to happen until the check clears, right? So as I kind of alluded to, when Matt Welch wrote that piece about the Libertarian Convention, which I haven't read, to be fair, he wrote about it for a reason. He talked about Tom and people who were influenced by Tom Woods, of course. Do more live night sheets. That's funny. Yeah, that's the thing with having the show 4 days a week. I'm going to talk about Libertarian Infighting, then also talk about Nightshade and on personal stuff about that. So Tom really thought Matt's piece was fair. I know Matt fairly well. I think Matt is an honorable guy, a decent guy. He's not, by his own admission, some kind of ideologue, and that's fine. I'm so big on not judging people by their ideas but by their actions, and I don't understand, or I do understand, but I don't agree with the opposite mentality, which is, it's again, to me, it's like if someone likes the same music as you, that has absolutely no relevance whatsoever to whether they're going to get along with you. So if someone has the same politics as you, yeah, maybe you guys are going to get along culturally, but that doesn't mean anything vis-a-vis you getting along with them on a, what do you call it? Hold on, I'm just going to put this in Facebook. Getting along with them on a personal level. Now it's on Facebook. Great. So, yeah, and that's the other thing. There's lots of people at Reason. There's lots of people at Mises or Mises affiliate. It's not like Tom lives at Mises. It's not like... It's not like he's a senior fellow, but he's clearly doing his own thing. Matt's an employee, of course, of Reason. It's a very different situation. So, yeah, Tom was like, hey, this looks... this was pretty fair. And he's like, let me, reach out to Matt. And when I said, okay, let me ask him. And Matt's like, I wanted to reach out to Tom. So they already kind of laid the groundwork. And me, I'm like, all right, this is such a great opportunity for the show. This would be so fun, especially because both of them like me and respect me, and the feeling is completely mutual. I knew I wouldn't let it get too heated and too antagonistic and too nasty. I was a little surprised that Tom went after David Bowes like he did, although I understand why. I'm the same way in the sense of, if someone is going after my friends or my, I use that word in many senses, but people who I kind of have loyalty to, I definitely run interference for them, and I'm happy to do it, and I'm really good at it. So I don't like bullying, and I think that's what Tom clearly perceived David was doing. I haven't seen what David wrote, so I can't opine on that one way or another. I would guess the feeling is probably largely mutual, in the sense that I'm sure the Mises Caucus people think very poorly of the Cato people. I mean, just right now, I just saw a tweet from someone from Cato attacking the Unite the Right rally tomorrow, which, as a Jewish person, I'm obviously not on their favorite list. And they said, oh, these are just white nationalist loser nobodies. It's like, sure, but white nationalist loser nobodies also won the Civil War, so and ended slavery. So it's not as simple as people would like to make it out to be. And marginalizing, dismissing people, in my opinion, is not going to make them vanish, and it's not going to make them lose their their power. So anyway, so I reached out to Tom, I reached out to Matt. Both were more than happy to do it. Both had done my show before when it was on Compound Media. So I was like, holy crap, I can't believe this is actually going to happen, because for years, for decades, you had let me think about all the libertarian feuds that have gone on in the past. You had Ayn Rand versus Rothbard, and I'm using the word feud very loosely because Rothbard did respect Rand. I'm using it very loosely. So you had Rand versus Rothbard, you had Rand versus Fee, Rand versus Friedman, Friedman versus Mises, Friedman versus Rothbard. Who else was there even in, like, Rothbard versus Ed Crane, head of Cato, Rothbard versus the Koch brothers. I'm sure there's some more that I'm blanking on, and a lot of the times it got very vituperative, and I mean, the Beltway people versus Ron Paul, people throwing him under the bus, so. Yeah, I don't like that in the sense of, Nick Gillespie versus Walter Block. There's another one. I don't, as someone who's pretty nasty and antagonistic, I'm not someone who's big on publicly calling people out, because then they're in a bad position in the sense of they can't back down, because then they look like they're pussies and they're letting you push them around. So if you came at them being like, hey, I disagree with you about X, Y, and Z, then they could be like, well, no, it's because of this, this, and this. But if you call them out and say blah, 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 and you're an asshole, they can't find common ground with you, because then that's just validating your antagonistic, aggressive behavior. So, and that's the other thing is, where was I going with this? Yeah, seeing like a lot of this is a lot of this happens on Facebook, and I don't understand it, because again, I have friends with so many people across the political spectrum. Living in Brooklyn, I love intellectual diversity. I hate that word diversity, but that's funny, because a lot of times when the arguments people have against me is like, well, what if everyone thought like you? Then about like not voting. My article about not voting from The Guardian, and it's like, is that really a concern? Is everyone going to start, getting 30 pairs of jeans, collecting succulents, being obsessed with the Legion of Superheroes? And would that be so bad? I don't think so. But of course, no one is going to start doing that. And it's really a non-argument. It comes from the Kant idea that you should act in a way that everyone in the world can act the same way as you do, which I think is such a narcissistic, self-centered approach. By definition, it's saying you're in the middle of the universe and you have to kind of extrapolate outward. So it's something I don't like at all. And again, there's people who I don't necessarily get along with, not even in a fighting, just like I find them annoying and I don't like talking to them, but I'm not going to put them on blast publicly if they're doing something to promote, if they're living their truth, even if they're lefties, who are like social justice warriors. I've got social justice warrior friends, and they're a great resource for me. Like, if I'll run an idea across them, then they'll be like, okay, they'll either be, I've never had them give me crap. I can't think of any time other than the one tweet when I tweeted at Linda Sarsour asking her if she's circumcised. That was the only time I've ever gotten crap from my lefty friends about anything. They were very supportive of me talking to Jared Taylor. They're very supportive of me going into Charlottesville. They're very supportive of me doing all this stuff. So, yeah, it's something I'm kind of, and I wish, and again, this is subjective. Other people may be wired differently, but I don't understand, or I don't agree with the fact that if I can do it, and me being someone who enjoys antagonism and hostility, it's made my life better to be collegial than it is to be antagonistic. So anyway, so Matt and Tom were both showed up. They were both in suits. I don't wear suits for Gas Digital for You're Welcome because it's much more of a laid-back network, and also because they're like an avenue, they're like an East Village, so it's really hot to get there, and it's a situation. And I wanted to distinguish the two shows as much as possible. So that's kind of my thinking there. If you guys have any questions, you could just shoot them at me. I'll read some of them later. There's also the super chats if you want to do that. If not, that's cool too. So the other thing I want to talk about with this live stream is I totally get why people are into this now, because I haven't had a regular job since it might be like 2012. Like 2014. It's got to, I don't remember when I worked at the New York Times, which is failing badly for like 2 months, or 2 or 3 months. I worked there, but other than that, I haven't had a regular gig for a very long time, and I was very concerned about taking on a taking on like a daily gig. It's because I have to rearrange my whole life. I didn't know if I'd have enough content to produce on the show. I have to find the stories, I have to, figure out what I want to say. I have to be able to talk extemporaneously for half an hour, find pictures, add the captions. Some people have been sending stories in the Facebook group, which I really enjoy and appreciate, and those have been very helpful. Oh, by the way, so what's happening on the last week of August, I believe, I'll tell you right now, on the week of, let me open the calendar, on the week of the 27th, Compound Media is off. So what I'm going to be, but we could do pre-tapes, which doesn't really make sense for me per se. But what I'm going to be doing is having 4 shows, one of which is going to be about, each show will be about some organization that I don't like. So it'll be an episode about The Root. We'll have an episode about National View. We'll have an episode on Jezebel, I'm thinking, and an episode about God's Mistakes. So I think that'll be a lot of fun, because I just read, I don't know if you guys, some of you obviously watch Nightshade. We just did an episode on Thursday, on this girl Brooklyn Becky, who called the cops on this black woman who was like, it was not even black, actually, she was Hispanic. She was standing in the doorway in the rain waiting for an Uber, and I recognized the corner because I was just in that corner again today, but The Root had this insane analysis of it, saying like, yes, it's racism, but her autism is an excuse, and what about black autistics? And it was like, oh my God, this is just amazing. And I was looking at that doorway again today. I passed it already. It was very, very odd and interesting a story. So yeah, so I also don't want the show, although I'm positioned to do it, to be, You're Welcome specifically, to be a libertarian show per se, because I think there's lots of other people who do that better. I don't consider myself a libertarian, although, because I don't like that word. I don't like the associations with the party. I certainly don't like the associations with people like Gary Johnson, and some other figures who I just have I think little in common with. Bill Weld, certainly. And I think when you use labels that are imprecise, the 1948 version of The Fountainhead was on TV tonight. Have you seen it? And if yes, what do you think of it? I've got a great story about this. I have the DVD. I am not a fan. However, I have a box, literally a cardboard wooden box that's folded, that's of hundreds of photos from the movie, like stills that they used in production. So I should show that off at some point. I did not think the movie was great. Rand did not think the movie was great. I thought the book was far better. And and I actually, when the guy who did Ayn Rand: A Sense of Life, which was Emmy nominated, the documentarian, I forget his name, he reached out to Patricia Neal. The woman who played Dominique Franken in the movie, Patricia Neal, was also married to Roald Dahl. And what's amazing about that story is she had a memoir. I forgot what it's called. I read it. I've written to her. I've gotten her autograph. Roald Dahl, she had a stroke when she was pretty young. And Roald Dahl, who wrote James and the Giant Peach, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator. Sorry to hear you're out of work. Here's $10. No, I'm in work. I've got 2 gigs. I'm like, yeah. I'm like that in Living Color sketch. So Roald Dahl, while she had her stroke and was like all messed up, he started having an affair with her with her nurse, in front of her. So he is really one of the worst people who's ever lived. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. He was just a despicable, despicable man. And yeah, so that's the Patricia Neal story. So anyway, the guy who did the documentary, Ayn Rand, A Sense of Life, wrote to her and said, can you come talk about working, on the Fountainhead movie? And she said, and I saw that because I saw the screening in Washington, D.C., or rather it was in Maryland. I forget where it was. Right up that big street that goes up through Arlington. I forget what it's called, by American University. And he says, I called Patricia Neal to do the movie, and she goes, all I remember is Gary Cooper, because they had this big affair on the set of the movie. And he goes, well, can you come in? Can you talk about that? She's like, I don't want to. And he's like, well, that's not fair. He goes, well, that's life, kid. I think she passed away. I don't remember. But that was a funny story about that film. That film is great. Sharon Glass narrates it. I'm remodeling my hall bathroom. Did you get your sink fixed? God forbid. God forbid. No. That's not. I mean, I'm going to have to end up paying for it out of my pocket, I'm sure. And it's going to be very annoying. But we'll have to make it happen. Yeah, this landlord's not fixing this sink. So, yeah, that was my thoughts on the Fountainhead movie. Some of you might also know that Oliver Stone bought the rights to the Fountainhead. Did you see the video of Philip A. Ludi I tweeted? I did not. Some of you, and I don't know what. I'm sorry. I'll tell you all right now. If someone's like, "Here, watch this video," like 99 times out of 100, I won't. I won't click on it because I get so many of them. So unless there's like, you should watch this because X, Y, and Z, I can't watch them all. I'm sure people understand. Where was so Oliver Stone bought the rights to the Fountainhead, and he was going to make the premise that Howard Rourke is someone who's socially conscious and designs like housing projects to help poor people, right? Like, and not in the same way Rand meant. And it was such a perfect example of, if you want to tell that story, which is a perfectly valid story and can be done extremely well, about an architect who wants to bring architecture to the poorest, that's admirable. That's great. You can make that movie. Just don't call it The Fountainhead. And it was such an example of Rand's philosophy come to life, and the second-hander, and being like, I'm going to buy The Fountainhead, and I'm going to make this movie, and it's going to be the exact opposite of what The Fountainhead's about, but I'm going to appropriate the name and the brand, for my own benefit, because I can't create something of value and pervert that brand. And it's really kind of shockingly what a Rand villain he was like in that situation. There was recently a Fountainhead play, which my buddy Todd went to, and it was like 3.5 hours, and it was all Dutch. And I tweeted about it because there's a photo of adapted from Rand's novel, and I'm sure it wasn't authorized. And I'm like, oh God, there's one thing the Fountainhead's against. It's taking someone else's work and appropriating it to your own needs, right? And he saw it. It goes, actually, there was subtitles on the stage somehow. It was completely accurate and wonderfully well done. But I loathe live theater. I mean, Gavin and I agree on this. Who a lot of you misheard me saying that me and him don't get along yesterday. But we do. I said we are on good terms, and it sounded like we aren't on good terms. I actually emailed him to be on. To call into Nightshade on Monday. He hasn't replied yet, but hopefully that can happen because I'm sure he has a lot to say, and it's always really fun talking to him. So those are my thoughts on Tom and Matt. Yeah, so yeah, like I don't know how. I don't know that I'd be having a show. So that's another reason why I'm doing this live stream besides being home, because the weekends are for amateurs in New York. it's like, okay, if I'm running my mouth 4 days a week, it's kind of like on other days, I don't want to just be sitting here. Like, if this is something people enjoy, then I'll freaking do it. Why not? I mean, I don't know how Owen does this for 2.5 hours a day. I guess I should watch one of his live streams to figure it out. But I don't know that I have that much of interest to say about many particular things. The other thing I wanted to discuss is I was on Kennedy this week, which the clips on my Facebook and on my website have my Monster Low Carb and keep up the good work. Well, thank you. And you spelled it correctly. Yes, correct. Why not just view the left and right based on size of government instead of personality? One can believe in hierarchy and still be a socialist. There's a difference in believing in hierarchy and regarding it as admirable and, for example, so socialism, I view ethics as preceding politics. I think our ethics system comes first. A lot of times someone will, refer to someone as a fascist, like at a party. It's not really a political issue. So by saying left and right is based on size of government, that's really a nice way of saying that that's really a nice way of saying that basically that's reading people out of your side of the equation. You know what I mean? That's like people say, oh, the Democrats were the real racist. Does anyone really think like William McKinley and Lincoln were these like NAACP types? Of course they weren't. So there's bad people on both sides, and this kind of tribalism, which is like, well, I'm good, this person's bad, therefore this person's not my tribe, is not logical, and I'm saying that in a precise sense, nor is it historically accurate. Like the Nazis being textbook examples, the Nazis regard themselves as right-wing, their opponents regard them as right-wing. Viscerally, everyone thinks of them as right-wing, so to be like, well, they were socialists, so they were left-wing, is not accurate. I mean, nationalism versus internationalism is one big distinction between right and left, because one big distinction between right and left is, are you for everyone, inclusionism, or are you putting up barriers? Now, Chesterton, who I hate, had a great quote. One of the best conservative quotes, which I'm going to mess up a little bit, which is, left and right don't have morality to it if viewed by size. I don't agree. I don't agree with that at all. Chester said, before you tear down a fence, figure out why it was put up first. Meaning, like, don't tear down historical barriers that the reasons might have been forgotten because they might still serve a purpose. And I think that's certainly true. And that's the right-wing approach, meaning not everything has to be for everyone. Whereas leftism, and this is leftism, I talk about this in the book, leftism at its best and at its worst are like, we have to make everything accessible for as many people as possible. So this is one big distinction between left and right. This is Russian universalism versus Nazi, it's not for everyone at all universalist. Now, they later backpedaled it and they had, okay, socialism in one country, but they very much thought, especially after 1917, that this would be a world revolution and war would be over because war is a function of capitalist imperialism. This was a Leninist idea. So, yeah. So that's the difference between right and left. We got 300 people. What are you guys all doing at home? It's interesting. The other good thing is going to be a week of thunderstorms. I was walking soaked in the rain. I actually ended up being a block away from that Brooklyn Becky's house where that woman called the cab. I think it's so much fun to walk in the rain and in the snow. I was walking to my friend's house in January, I think, or so. The snow was coming down. It was thick and heavy. And I was thinking to myself, why am I having so much fun here? And I realized, oh, it's because of my Soviet genetics. And, we're built for the snow. I'm like a husky, except I don't wear the husky-sized pants. They're too big for me, boy-size husky. Why are we at home? We're libertarians. Yeah. Excuse me. Hold on. Let's see. What else can we talk about? Oh, Jonathan Haidt has a book coming out in a couple of weeks. On September 1st, there's, I think, the first ever biography of Eliza Hamilton, which I'm really excited about. It's funny, a lot of times I'll see a book coming out and I'll want to kind of get the author on. And there was a book that just came out about the Bowery, The Devil's Mile it was called, which is a street in New York. And I thought it was all going to be about, there's a book called Low Life by, who wrote Low Life? I'm totally blanking on his name. It's a French guy. Anyway, which is all about dirty New York and filthy New York and how awful it was. And I thought Bowery was going to be about that, but it was really a history of New York City because it goes back to like the Dutch era, and the book was not good. And there was a lot of gratuitous hardcore leftyism. Luc Sante wrote Low Life. It's amazing. Yeah, it's just really, really amazing book. Which I really enjoyed. Again, I'm about to start the file, reading Hubert David Crowley. It's really interesting. So this book, The Promise of American Life, which was the book that was Teddy Roosevelt's Bible, he's extremely openly racist in it. It's really kind of interesting, which is kind of the big... do you know if Tom Woods on Rubin will happen? I have no information about that. And in fact, if that had happened, I'm sure Tom would have told me. So I don't have any further info about that at all. It sounds like I'm sure at some point it'll happen. So, what was I saying? I can't read Russian. I can only read it very, 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 very poorly. I'm surprised Gavin hasn't replied, to be honest. He's usually good with that stuff. Nope. Okay. Let's see, what else did I want to talk about? Oh, yeah, so anyway, it's just really fun. It's going to be a week of thunderstorms. And part of the fun of having fancy denim is you get to watch it get soaked and get to watch it age. I'm going to have the guys from Naked and Famous Denim, which is the best denim company, on the show. They're opening a store in New York in the near future. I know people have been asking for a denim episode, as well as people asking me desperately not to have a denim episode. But if you don't watch it, suck it up. Tuesday, Freddie Lim, then Stossel. It's going to be... Oh, and again, if anyone's been to Turkey, I'm going to be in Bodrum, however it's pronounced, I think in exactly a month or so, to be speaking at the Property and Freedom Society. I don't know what to happen. I hope it doesn't get canceled because there's all this drama going on with Turkey now. Their money's collapsing. Robbie Suave called Gavin a cruel and loathsome cult leader. Thoughts? Well, I think that goes to what I said at the beginning of this. It's I don't believe in calling people out. I don't think Gavin is cruel. I don't think it's a cult. So, yeah. I wouldn't say that. And it's really? Hey, Bezat, I was just talking about you guys. I don't, and the people at Reason get along with Gavin, so I think that's disappointing to hear that. I get along fine with Robbie, so yeah. Oh, I can't wait. The Naked Famous episode is going to be a lot of fun. I'll give you guys a preview. So I was just wearing my pornography pants. One of the things they did, these guys are such innovators, is how can an anarchist society exist in the presence of more militaristic states interested in suppressing voluntarism among their own populations? Yes, that is the problem. So the problem is, if you read Moon is a Harsh Mistress, that's a great example. The way to solve that would be an asymmetry between the cost of enforcement versus the benefit. And in fact, whenever you want to look at Vietnam War, right? Whenever you want to invade and conquer a population, you've got to outnumber them. I think the number's like 3-1. I forget the exact number. I'm not a military expert, but this is something that's very well known. Like, it's much harder to, and this is even in the game Risk, it's much harder to attack than it is to defend. So that would be one of the issues. And again, let's suppose Hawaii went anarchist, for example, or someplace that's geographically isolated. No one would care. The idea that, like, if you don't have a government, you're going to be invaded. There are many countries right now, small islands, who don't have any defense and are basically under the ward of another country that's not even close to them. This is, or it's a protectorate, I think is the term. So yeah. I think that would be the short answer. This is obviously an extremely long and complicated subject. I can't troll Michael Malice, but I want to. Oh, honey. I've gotten trolled. Why do you think the new right Cernovich are pushing the Dems are the real racist meme? Cernovich is smart enough to know it's not true. Because it'll force... I can't speak for Mike. But I think it would force a lot of people on the left to make their positions explicit, and it costs them time and energy to defend it. I think this is, and it also will sway people in the middle, because now it's not about, it'll make there be an ambiguity. So, because historically they've had the high ground, and this is a card they used all the time. So this also will take away their ability to use that card, because again, according to the left, racism is simply. I think it was who's the guy? I think it's Peter Brimelow who had the quote that racism is a racist is someone winning an argument with a progressive. There's a whole chapter about this in the book. But basically, the point is, yeah, if you being against Obamacare was racist, being against immigration is racist, being for police is racist, and being against public education is racist. I mean, yeah, people of color tend to be poorer in America. That's certainly true. And therefore, if you're going after things that disproportionately hurt poor people, it's very easy to make that switch and say you're disproportionately hurting minorities, and therefore that's your goal. So so to take that out of their hands would be a very effective weapon, because for the everyday American, correctly, being a racist is a real problem, something desperately want to avoid. If you meet someone from another country as a tourist who's friendly, you don't want to step on their toes. It's just being a dick for no reason. So yeah, my Kim Jong-il autobiography is not in Spanish. No, it's not. The dear leader would not allow that. So the most I've ever spent on a book, it might have been the first edition of Ego and His Own from 1840, maybe, which wasn't even that much, I think. So yeah. Oh god, it's already been half an hour. This is so fun. Yeah, remember when North Korea was getting new Guam? I mean, again, a lot of these, like Guam is like I mean, obviously it has a government, and I know there's a governor. I was on Tucker Carlson with him, but it's these weird in-between kind of areas. The Falkland Islands, yeah, they were under British rule, but like, they had very little to do with Britain in a sense, because they're so far away. So yeah. What else did I want to discuss? I can't really think of anything. I'm really looking forward to, let's see what stories I have queued up for Nightshade in the next week. I've been saving them all. Oh, yeah. I don't know if you guys saw this. This is going to be a good story. Hungary discontinued their gender studies program in their university. So Hungary is one of the countries to watch. Oh, here's the other one. Like the big story that I feel like I'm the only one covering half these European stories. Like it's really bizarre to me because this is such low-hanging fruit to cover. The Green Party in Germany has now overtaken Alternative for Deutschland. They are now in third place, and the three of them, the Social Democrats, which has been the center-left so-called party in Germany, since World War II, are now basically at a within 1 or 2 points at all times with the Greens and Alternative for Deutschland. So they have one big party, Angela Merkel's Christian Democrats, and then you have basically 3 third parties, and there's no second party. It's a thing that's happening in real time right before our eyes. This is a complete change with German political history since World War II. No one's following it. There was one period, like I think 10 years ago, when the Greens actually overtook the Social Democrats, and there was a time last year in June where they were third ahead of AfD, but it was kind of like they had 8 and AfD had 7, and now all the polls are like Social Democrats at 18, AfD at like 15, at 14, excuse me, the Greens at 15. Now, can you imagine if we had a system, and Angela Merkel's at 30, can you imagine we had a system when, like, let's say the Republicans had 30%, the Democrats had 18%, and the Green Party had like 15%, and I don't even know who the Pat Buchanan Party, the American Constitution Party would have 14%. It would be insane. We wouldn't know what to make of it, and that's what's actually happening, and no one is discussing this. I'm watching this very, very closely. It's unprecedented, and to see, and again, the Social Democrats, which is the equivalent of Labour in the UK, have collapsed in 2 other countries. In Czech Republic, they're in sixth, after being in second or first. And in the Netherlands, they also went to like 9th after being in second and being like the main party for much of the Cold War. So this is really, and everyone wants to talk about the rise of the kind of populist right. Do you think there will be a split between CDU and CSU? I'm not an expert on German politics, but my money says no, that this is just squabbling. I would bet good money on it. So that's my level of confidence there. So other than focusing on the rise of right-wing populism in Europe, there's also the collapse of moderate so-called leftism in Europe. Isaac Maccabee, from one former yeshiva to another, I know you're very fond about Harvey Pekar. How do you feel about the awful things he said about Israel? I don't really have much of a bad thing to say about Harvey. I don't know what I know he said. I mean, Harvey was a socialist, so Harvey was a hardcore socialist. He had the very lefty Alexandria Ocasio Cortez, whatever her name is, position pretty much in everything. So I wouldn't be surprised if he was denigrating Israel. But again, Harvey was such a great person. I don't care what he says. I mean, I don't care what anyone says about Israel. It's not really my issue. I don't. I think I've tweeted about it once. The only people I see who talk about Israel as is the alt right types. Other than that, I don't really. None of my friends really discuss it. And everyone, people like to ask me about it because they think this is because I'm Jewish. This is one of my big pet issues. My big pet issue is North Korea, and number two is Europe. By far, I think it's. I don't know how many parties are in the Knesset at all. But yeah, Harvey's. He's a good guy. He died on my birthday. It was awful in 2010, which was the same day that Hamilton died as well. So I don't know what to say about that. Do I have any good Harvey stories? I've got a lot of them. I should do an episode on him one day. So what's even funnier is Harvey, obviously, someone gave me like a hand-drawn Sarah Litt, who was an editor of DC Comics. Harvey didn't draw his comics. He wrote them. And he just basically had different artists, and people always thought he was a cartoonist. He wasn't. And what he did was someone gave me the hand-drawn like stick figure like outline for one of the comic books, which I have, which I really, really enjoy. Yeah, I miss him a lot. He gave me my golden ticket. Yeah, that was a good, fun relationship. I'll have to talk about that at some point. Yeah, I only got on his show because I hooked up with him because of Howard Stern, because he was flown back in town to be on Howard Stern by himself. Because otherwise, if he was with his wife Joyce, I would never have been able to sit down and talk with him, because she was a real piece of work. And I don't know if I'm sure she's still alive, but yeah. All right, I'm gonna do this for a few more minutes. Actually, I one time I met Howard Stern. I went to Al D'Amato, former senator of New York, was having a book signing, and I went for some weird reason, and a car pulls up, and I was there, and I'm like, all right, like a town car, and I'm like, who's gonna come out of this? And out comes Robin Quivers, and I was like, oh my god, because I was such a Stern fan. And I'm like, Robin, sign my book. And have you seen American Splendor? What do you think, Greg? It was an extremely accurate portrayal of Harvey, beyond. So Joyce Brabner, his wife, was banned from the set by Hope Davis, who played her. And quote Hope, I could feel her eyes boring into the back of my head. So it was very accurate. It didn't show his warmth as much as it could have. How much do you think politics are just sports for smart people rather than actual impact? I think there's a big part of that because everyone has their teams, but there's obviously a huge amount of impact on people's lives. I mean, but the difference between sports and politics is you can win at sports. You can't win with politics. You're going to lose. So yeah. Oh, geez. Anyway, what was I saying about it? So, yeah, so Hope Davis was banned from the set of the movie, and so on. And, God, I'm just having the montage of, like, all these Harvey stories. I'm not going to do my impression of him, but I've got a pretty good understanding. My favorite Harvey story, honestly, was he had been on a world tour, and I kept calling him, and he wasn't. I didn't know he was on a world tour, and he didn't stop calling me, and I thought he was upset at me or something like that, because he had these feuds all the time. He got into this big feud with Art Spiegelman, I think in the pages of Comics Journal, and I was actually friends with Art's daughter, not just Spiegelman, who's an author now, and I was at her house talking to him, and he's just like, why is Harvey, the idea that I was at the house was kind of funny. And so I got him on with Harvey. He's telling me about his world tour, and again, they call him an everyman. He really, really was. What do you recommend for lecturing on European ethno-nationalism, specifically on the SPD in Czech Republic? I have no recommendation. I just read articles and check Wikipedia. So I would not be in a position to lecture on that. just following the news. There's no book that I could think of. Have you had Dave Smith on your welcome? Have you had Google on your computer? So, fuck, what was I saying? Oh, meeting Howard Stern. So I'm at the Aldamato book signing. A town car pulls up. Oh, so my favorite Harvey story than Howard Stern. Harvey story. I call him. He calls me up. He's telling me about his world tour, and he talks about when he was in the UK or something. He met Alan Moore, and again, Harvey was such an everyman. And I go, "Wow, you met the Alan Moore?" And he goes, "Yeah, the Alan Moore." And I felt like such an asshole. Thoughts on Chinese re-education camps? I mean, it's unconscionable. I mean, there's really nothing else that I could possibly say. I mean, this is. I'm not particularly insightful on China, but we talk a lot about China on Tuesday's episode with Freddie Lim, vis-a-vis Taiwan. It's all about China and Taiwan. So, Howard Stern. So I'm at the book signing. Robin comes out of the limo, and I go, "Robin, sign my book." I was shocked, and she goes, "I don't have a pen," and starts cracking up. So she really is like that. She just laughs at anything. Then Howard comes out, and I don't remember if I had a pen or somehow it appeared, but as he was coming back out of the signing, the media swarmed him, and as he's answering questions, he signed my book without even looking at me, but he did it. He was very friendly, and got into the town car, so I still have that. So that was very, very cool. And one of the producers on Howard Stern pitched my Kickstarter to him, and the book, and I guess they didn't bite, which I understand. But yeah, that would have been a big coup. I used to watch that show obsessively. Yeah, that was a great show. And I told Laura Loomer, I was very excited. I told Laura Loomer that she's basically doing what Stuttering John did back in the day. She'd never heard of him because she's just a kid. So I'm like, hey, watch some of these videos. It's very similar to what you're doing. And I think a lot of what she's doing is really kind of funny. And obviously people don't know what to make of her at all. Okay, I think I'm going to bounce in. I keep saying I'm going to bounce, but this is just fun. I never got Loomered, but she was on my show on You're Welcome when it was on Compound Media. You could find it in the archives there. So, yeah. Okay, I guess that's I'm thinking of who else I would want to I emailed Ann Coulter to hopefully to have her on the show on Your Welcome. That would be really, really amazing. I remember meeting her at Fox, and it was very, very cool. She was very friendly. She's very friendly in person. Yeah, looking forward to going to Turkey. Looking forward to next week of Nightshade. I'll try doing these more often because people seem to have fun with this. It's just weird. I know. It's like if you're having the show 4 days a week, why not have it this more spontaneous and less newsy at other times? Because 400 people apparently seem to find it interesting to hear what I have to say. It's funny. I don't really look at the chat while I'm talking, and then I glance over, and it's just other than the super chats, so just glance over and seeing. Yeah, I don't know who Liz Wolfe is. I'm not trying to be like some kind of libertarian clearinghouse. So yeah. Are you going to Property and Freedom Society? Yeah, I'm going to be one of the speakers. Okay, I will see you all. If there's no is that a lot? 400 viewers. I will see you all at some time soon. At the very least, I will be there on Monday, and I will be clean shaven. So